Welcome to the Bitcoin Business Podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about the intersection of Bitcoin and the world of business. We want to talk with people that know what is going on in this industry, and we want to educate people that want to learn why Bitcoin is important and how it fits into their organization. And today I am joined by Jeff Newman. He has recently joined Sovreign as our business development officer, and I'm extremely excited about having him dedicate his time to educating the world about Bitcoin. So why don't you introduce yourself, Jeff?
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me. So Jeff Newman, I'm the new business development officer for Sovreign, and I'm excited to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you here. I think we're going to have a great conversation. And I think the first thing to start out with is I think the audience would love to know who you are, a little bit of intro to where you come from, why you've decided to, because you haven't always had a career in Bitcoin. So how did you end up here and why did you
Yeah,
choose to pursue that?
thank you. So I guess, I could, kind of walk through my LinkedIn, but everyone's on a Bitcoin journey if they choose to be on a Bitcoin journey. And I've been on a Bitcoin journey in private for a long time. And it kind of got to the point in my traditional fiat career where I'm like, okay, I think I'm on the wrong path, that I need to course correct. And also, what am I obsessed with? What am I interested in? What do I have a differentiated point of view on? And only that, then I can actually help people more. And so basically, I took my Bitcoin journey and decided to kind of go pro in the sense of, okay, who's out there? And I've been doing consulting and software as a service sales, SaaS sales for over a decade. And, in enterprise software and helping higher education and all these use cases. And again, the more I learn about Bitcoin, there's nothing more mission critical than store of value and like understanding like what is money and on a personal individual level, but also for protecting businesses and giving them runway and startups with hurdle rates and also again, saving businesses from going out of business so that they can employ more people. It's just like good for the economy and so forth. And so again, I think there's less Bitcoiners in the world than normal people, but I think there's been inflection points, especially in the last week or two with the White House and the mainstream. So it's like all of my studying has been vindicated over and over where I'm like, okay, this really is going mainstream, and so
it is.
And it's like, okay. And like, okay, now I feel comfortable talking about it on LinkedIn. And so I found Sovreign, I found Daniel, I found you and everyone else by looking for consultancies that were helping with Bitcoin. And, there's the big ones, there's the Deloitte and there's the others, and they've written token articles, in Bitcoin Magazine, but it didn't mean that they understood like Bitcoin versus blockchain or Bitcoin versus crypto. And so basically it's like, okay, there might have been some thought pieces from the big name brand consultancies, but that doesn't mean it was a consultancy made up of Bitcoiners with the mission of orange pilling and helping. And so I see this huge gap, this huge opportunity, which is helping, let's say, entrepreneurs, well-being business owners, like directors, operators. We could even go into universities. I mean, it's limitless. Just the individual. But the individual as a professional. And how can I help or join a team, because I can't do everything by myself, of helping with the mindset, the mental model, the strategy, and all the signal that we're getting from the Bitcoin community that's lost. And so again, seems to be a lot of information I'm gathering, let's say from X and from conferences and from podcasts and so forth. And then you go over to LinkedIn, and it's the gap is huge. And so it's like, okay, there are people posting about Bitcoin on LinkedIn, and that's a good thing. But again, I think the opportunity and the challenge here is, let's say I've been in Bitcoin for 5 to 10 years and I've overcome hurdles and there's a personal journey and I could go off and tell stories. But what if you're a business owner operator in your professional life and you're under a lot of pressure and you're curious about Bitcoin? The last so many years, it's been like career risk, don't talk about it. Maybe it's specific to your industry, but also you say, who do you trust teach you about Bitcoin? Is there a class? Can I get a credential? Oh, I listen to some podcasts. Okay. But the outcome of that doesn't make you an expert or a Bitcoin maxi.
Right.
There's traps, there's scams. You can inflate Bitcoin with crypto. Maybe one of the mainstream consultancies would sell you a blockchain project because they don't have any lines in the sand between a CBDC or like, a database blockchain. They don't really, have the principles and understanding perhaps for Bitcoin
Hmm.
only and why. So my point is what took me maybe 5 to 10 years to gather a point of view, some level of expertise, but also the humility to know that like on my own, I can't answer every question. That's why the beauty of Sovreign is to say, if we help a customer or we can qualify something, we can say, what based on your outcomes and your maturity and your industry and where you are, then we can gather the right team. So I think the value of professional services consultancy around Bitcoin is professional coaching, guiding, but also maybe collapsing the learning curve from a decade to maybe a few
Yes.
years. Right.
Yes.
So yeah. So
Brilliant.
again, yeah, there's a lot there, but yeah, it's
There is, I do want to kind of riff off on that before we move on to other things, because I think that's a very underappreciated thing. Do you wanna learn from people that are trying to learn about Bitcoin? Which I would probably lump in the big four and the incumbent kind of consultancies. They're not made up of hardcore Bitcoiners that have spent 10,000 hours understanding this. They're trying to understand it themselves, and I'm not surely they have people that understand it, but personally, I would rather learn from the people that have been in the trenches, in the belly of the beast, and they've gone through all this stuff that you and I have. We're not just armchair philosophers. We've gone through the block size wars and the FTX crashes and all that. We really understand and value the principles and values that we have about saying no to crypto, no to blockchain and Web3 and conflating all these things. And the other thing you mentioned is Bitcoin used to be this fringe thing. It was this kind of funny online thing. Those days are over. There's the world that's existing now and the rapidly approaching world of Bitcoin, where the White House is now talking about it. They made a strategic Bitcoin reserve. People don't know this is happening, but they need to, similar to the internet or social media or any other kind of technology coming on the scene, you need to understand it. So maybe you can speak a little bit more to that and how you want to help with that and the value of that.
yeah, absolutely. It's like I think of it like Bitcoin as like a mental model. Like there's so many like lessons to learn, and some of this can be free education. Like through a newsletter and like a drip feed of just being interested in learning about Bitcoin in the first place. And so
Hmm.
I think there's like first there's like the psychology of it is I personally approach Bitcoin with intellectual honesty and humility in the sense of what is
Mm,
this? I don't know what this is, but there's enough attributes where it seems interesting or seems like it's going to work, but let's learn more. And by the way, I first heard about Bitcoin in 2013 when I think it was like around Thanksgiving. It like touched $1,000 for the first time. So it became like
mm,
so it like the consciousness of the mainstream, it's like it just showed up in the news or something. So it was like a
yeah.
talking point, but it was 2013. So it was very dismissive. And, it was one of those things of like, oh, I guess I've heard of this new thing, but I don't know what it is. And I'm busy. And so years go by. 2016, I was like, oh yeah, there's that Bitcoin thing. And so I'll just go get one. It's like under $1,000 and it was like skin in the game. It's like, if I get one, then I'll learn about it, and
Yes.
then 2017 happened where it went from 1,000 to 20,000. And that was the year where I sold one and, thought I was so smart. And then
Right.
a few months later, it just kept going up. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm not a trader, I'm not a gambler, and I don't understand what this is. Why is it going up so fast from a 1,000 to 20,000? Maybe there's something here. So I got back into it, and then years go by and I just was like dollar cost averaging and, like, learning incrementally. But again, the information was hard to come by. And,
Yes,
it's,
it was.
it was interesting where over the time, smarter people show up. So like Jack Dorsey, Michael Saylor, these people show up and have their point of view and their education. And I'd already had a basis where I was learning about this. But again, I go back to like personal journey, but let's say, I mean, there's all these blockers that stop people from even getting into the door. There's denial and psychological barriers. So again, just thinking it's a scam because you're conflating it with crypto, you know?
Yes.
Again, are you a gambler? Is that how you're approaching it? Are you a trader? Yeah. These are the pitfalls. Like, don't do that. So I would say
even misunderstanding we can't touch Bitcoin because it's not ESG friendly. There's all these different things that will just trip you before you even get started on it.
Also observing propaganda and misinformation campaigns. And I mean, they're all over the place from, was it Greenpeace being funded by one of the crypto companies, and saying it's bad for the environment, where, if you dig into it, it's literally the opposite. So, and that's a whole tangent there. So again, it goes back to like the personal journey, the professional journey. It starts with like getting off of zero. And then even there you have unit bias. So it goes back to, you bought a Bitcoin for under 1,000. Of course you did. It was easy, but I missed it. So now it's 100,000. How can a normal person afford a whole Bitcoin? And you'll say, okay, well, there's unit bias. It can be divided by Satoshis, sats, and you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin to use the system, to get started, to learn about it, and so forth. And it's for everybody. You can be a student and stack sats, right? You can and also then it goes into, is it an investment or is it saving? Right. And then so there's this whole course of like philosophy of like, what is money, right? Robert Breedlove and Michael Saylor and others. And it's like, there's the philosophical question of what is money? What is value? And then you realize, okay, so the fiat dollar, if that's your unit of account, your base, well, it's infinite. I mean, the money supply is growing so much. So like, even if you're a millionaire and you have $1 million, like out of what? Like, can you tell me the total dollar supply in the world? Right. But if you have one Bitcoin, you have one Bitcoin out of 21 million Bitcoin. And in 10 years, that'll be the same because it's a fixed basis. So the mental model, so these hurdles of learning, which can be taught, by the way, and they can be shared openly, but then what do you do with it is first unit bias, like get off of zero and don't have this blocker or entitlement of, if I can't have a whole Bitcoin, I want nothing. I mean, that's like saying, if I can't have a mansion, I don't want any house, or if I can't have a whole gold bar, I won't even stack a coin. It's like, start somewhere, right? So I always laugh about that. But yeah, it's like, if you think about like, what are the attributes of money? There's a store of value, right? So the Bitcoin, it can be savings as a store of value. And like, look at its performance over the last 5, 10, 15 years. It is a store of value when you then convert it back to dollars or euros or what have you. And the medium of exchange, this is where people get confused. I don't spend Bitcoin. It's not my currency, but it can be. And as a business operator, you could collect Bitcoin and you could spend Bitcoins, sats, and there's ways to do it on the Lightning Network and so forth. But you could also do, depending on your jurisdiction, I mean, are you in the US or are you in the rest of the world? There's also Tether and the dollar stable coins. That could be your medium of exchange. So there's that. But then I think the unit of account, that's the big one. It's the mental model. And this is where Sovreign and like where I think I can help is helping people think in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin can be your store of value. It's optional if you'd like to spend it as your medium of exchange. But the question is, are you thinking in Bitcoin terms? And remember, for the first time, we have a measuring stick, a real ruler, right? To measure value that's fixed. And I was listening to a podcast, I forget who it was, but it was basically saying how, but it's too volatile. Bitcoin is too volatile in dollars. It's up and down. And you're like, okay, well, you can zoom out over 4 to 5 years and show you that it's all up and to the right. But you say, is it volatile or is it the measuring stick against all the currencies? So like when I think about foreign exchange, FX, right? So if you actually have a denominator, Bitcoin, sats,
Hmm.
Now you can measure the volatility of the US dollar to it. And what's interesting is the last few years, Bitcoin was at all-time highs in some currencies, but not others. So it
Mm.
was interesting where it's like, wait, is it, Bitcoin's at all-time high in the Norwegian currency, krona, or it's in the peso, but not in the US dollar. And then
Right.
and so you're like, wait a minute. So like, and again, like I'm not personally interested in some of the currencies around the world. I'm not doing business there. I'm not spending that currency, but it's
Sure.
interesting to see Bitcoin is is the ruler, is the denominator. It's telling you a story because what is the value of the purchasing power of that currency? So any case, yeah, there's a lot of like things there where it's like, okay, when someone is interested in Bitcoin, do they even have any, right? So there's unit bias. Do they have a
Yep.
strategy on an individual or professional level? And then what are they going to do with it? Store a value, like, collect it for payments and have it on your treasury and like, again, like have it appreciate in relation to your local currency. Do you want to pay an international team with Bitcoin?
Hmm.
That's an option. And then the unit of account is like mental models on a personal, psychological, but then a professional level, like actually have a strategy is like, how can you plan for 5 years? It's like, Bitcoin isn't volatile. It's your currency is volatile. So
Very interesting.
these are the conversations where there's a lot of confusion and yeah. And I think like having a team of consultancies that understand Bitcoin that have gone through this and could like basically guide you out of the traps because there's no
Yes.
guarantee that I can tell you where some free courses are. I can tell you my favorite podcasts. There's authors that sell some paid courses, but there's no guarantee that you're going to get a credential or a tick box that says, okay,
No.
I get it. I'm a Bitcoin maxi. I've learned it. Like, I'm, you know, I'll never fall into a scam or like a trap
Right.
or get confused about basics. It's like, no, I really do think there is a huge opportunity here to help people.
Yes. There is a lot of different stuff I could pull on for that. I'll try to keep it light, but I think the gist of what you're saying is that understanding Bitcoin is not just a matter of, okay, it's a great investment, it's a store value, let me put it on my balance sheet or let me invest in it personally. But due to Bitcoin being so unique and so new, you have to change your entire thinking and learn a whole bunch of new things that, let's be honest, if you're a middle-aged executive and you maybe went to college in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you have no foundation for understanding the new implications of digital scarcity. You, I mean, first of all, having an asset monetized in real time, we haven't really seen that in our lifetime. And so people don't understand the whole going from a token to a store of value to a medium exchange and then the unit of account. They've never seen that before. They have nothing to relate it to. And all the things that trip you up, well, it's digital, does it have value? What about mining? What about the units? There are so many new things you have to understand in order to fully grasp Bitcoin. And I think at the end of the day, what we're coming down to is you can either choose to do all that on your own, or you can take the fast path. And it's not even just a fast track, it's also the most safest path because, okay, so here we go. I was a Bitcoin maxi, but I still got sucked into the whole Celsius BlockFi thing at
Right.
that point. I got out of it in time. And you know why? Because I listened to the Bitcoin maxis on Twitter and they said over and over again, you don't understand this. This is a new asset. This you cannot treat it like you do normal things. And my point is, you might think you understand and you know a lot, but you still are vulnerable to these very, very sophisticated scams. And we were even talking with it's just a normal person, not even a business owner through Sovreign, and we got them set up, started buying Bitcoin, and then a couple months later, I talked to them, and they got into Ethereum and Ripple and all that, and that's such a shame And of course, I try to do my best to help educate them, but they have to do their own work. My point is getting sucked into all that and ended up wasting your time, your reputation, your capital. It is such a waste of just time.
Yeah.
Why don't you leave that for the amateurs and then have the professionals put you on the right path right away instead of wasting all that time and all that money? Not even to mention, this is perhaps something you can speak to the opportunity cost of you trying to figure it out as Bitcoin is just running away from you, you know?
Yeah. No, you brought up so many things there. One, the journey of Bitcoin to say, am I late? And maybe I'll diversify. And
Mm,
so without
right.
knowing what you're doing, whether it's a personal account or a business account, saying, okay, well, let's get some
Yeah.
Ethereum or others. And they're not blue chip and, there's what use case and so forth. And so the best way to measure the value of these altcoins is look at Ethereum over Bitcoin, make Bitcoin
Yes,
your
exactly.
denominator and realize that Ethereum may pump temporarily in dollar terms, but it's actually long-term crashing against Bitcoin. So the question
Yes.
is diversifying out of Bitcoin. You need, like, if you're a business, maybe there's business expenses, but if you're going to get into digital assets, there's only one verifiably scarce
Yes.
digital asset. That's Bitcoin. Everything else, I mean, we should talk about why, and that's a private conversation.
Right.
But the key thing I always look at is everything is crashing when denominated in Bitcoin. And again, like, just all that is thinking about it that way. And if you thought about it that way, would you have diversified into these other ones? And by the way, you mentioned the FTX thing. When that happened, I went to the Swan Festival in Southern California, and it was so cool to hit the backdrop. This was November 2022. The backdrop was, oh, the industry is crashing. There's a scammer and this and that. And
Mm,
I remember, oh, okay, well, my Bitcoin is not on an exchange in the Bahamas that's sketchy. So the Bitcoin maxis were right. If you're going to get into Bitcoin and have any size, take personal responsibility, take it off of the exchange. Don't let them rehypothecate. Don't let them defraud you. Don't let them steal from you.
yeah.
And so I was protected from FTX because I knew better and I just didn't do business with them. And then two, like, their whole crash out was just a temporary blip in price action or whatever. So again, still there was signal and there was still people in the industry building. And it's like, okay, it's a bear market in dollar terms, but we all see the big picture here. Now, fast forward to March 2025, and it's amazing how far things have spot. We have an
Crazy.
AI crypto czar. We've got all these things happening, right? And so I wouldn't believe today so any case, so the FTX thing, but it was interesting when I talked to people that didn't do the work and didn't understand the industry. They're like, oh, like, Bitcoin's compromised. I'm like, no, it's not. It's the most
Yes.
secure network. Did you take self-custody and, just take it off the exchange? And then if you have size and a process, do you have a multi-sig set up, right? And I think it's important to say that for Sovreign, as a professional service consultancy organization, we're not going to sell the Bitcoin or do the custody or so forth. There's a whole partner network. So it's one of these things of knowing when to refer you to the best in class, you know,
Exactly.
organizations and teams, but also knowing that their business model isn't necessarily long-term consultancy. So there's guidance, but there's this trusted referral network of you can have more than one point of contact in this industry, and no one organization is going to do everything for you. So it's, again,
Yes.
we are consultative, we're trusted advisors, we're here for your journey, but we know when to hand you off when it's time to do something like set up a
Yes. Yes.
multi-sig wallet, right? Why multi-sig? So you don't have a single point of failure, specifically a Coinbase or FTX or what have you. And it's
Mhm.
like, so it's like, okay, so you might need to acquire the Bitcoin from an exchange. And by the way, we like the Bitcoin only ones, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, well, once you have it, the big risk is don't leave it there, And so again, this FTX backdrop was so funny that it's like, for the Bitcoin maxis or the people in the know, it didn't impact us at all. It was just an
Right.
interesting, confusing news backdrop.
Right. I think it's worthwhile saying that we're not coming out here guns blazing saying, just listen to us. We have all the answers and we have all the best products. That's not what we're saying. I would definitely be very hesitant with anybody saying, well, just come listen to us, just buy your Bitcoin with us, store your Bitcoin with us. That's definitely not what we're saying. We want to help you understand this. We want to educate you. And then based on your unique situation, I might even say, well, perhaps self-custody isn't the right thing for you, even though I think it is. It doesn't matter what I think. What matters is what is best for your situation. And whatever is the best for the client, we then have a pre-vetted network of the right businesses, the best in class. So this is in my mind, it's a dream scenario that if you are dealing with a nascent industry with very little guardrails and regulations and a lot of bad actors that masquerade as the innovation, if you could just work with the people that have already done the work, they've already put 1,000 hours and they've already researched everything, then skip that whole trial and error period and just go straight to the big win.
Yeah.
Lots of things we could talk. Also, the whole diversification thing. You're bringing in over an old way of looking at the world. Because certainly there's a reason to diversify in stocks and bonds and real estate and whatever. But diversifying in crypto, as Michael Saylor would say, you're selling the winner to buy the loser. This is a protocol. This is not a MySpace versus Facebook thing. Bitcoin is already here. It's already the internet of value. It is the monetary layer. So trying to diversify, you have to change your mental model on that. So I guess that's a great segue into why a business specifically should care about Bitcoin. Because certainly we could talk all day about why people in general should care about it, but what is the business case for Bitcoin?
Depends on the business, right? And depends on what the business wants to do. But I'll just say the first one is protecting the business, capital allocation, and the ability to do long-term planning and preserving capital to keep the business's lights on and to be able to hire. And if it's a startup, to have runway to do things. And I'll just say this, it goes back to, if you can just think of Bitcoin as your unit of account as the denominator, do this, go to Google and do US dollar over Bitcoin and look at a 5-year chart. Notice the trend. Think of the strongest currencies in the world, Switzerland, Norway, Japanese yen, whatever it is, like pick 5 of the strongest currencies. Go ahead and do the euro as well. Over 5 years or hit max time frame, everything is crashing in terms of Bitcoin. So in my previous...
You can do the same real estate or SPY or bonds or commodities. It's all, if you denominate it in Bitcoin, it's all going down to the right.
There's some really cool websites I've bookmarked, priced in Bitcoin. It's like the opportunity cost of buying that iPhone 5 years ago. And had you just put that, it's like, I used to hear that Rolexes are a great store of value. Like, oh, really? And so in 2016, I looked at the price of a Rolex, right? And then let's say you wanted to sell that same Rolex now. It's like, well, you can have X amount of dollars or you could have 5 to 10 Bitcoin. Well, what's the value of 5 to 10 Bitcoin now? And the answer is it's much better store of value if you give a 5 or 10 year time frame, right? And so the thing I would say to businesses is if you don't have a point of view or a strategy around Bitcoin, you should team up with professionals that do. And part of my personal point of view in the study and research I've done is, I've been doing digital transformation for a while now, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm so happy that Michael Saylor joined the space and he's a genius. But then it was, once I got to know him in 2020, then I started hearing like, well, what's he been up to the last 25, 30 years? And he wrote a book about like digital transformation of like, music and the iPhone and all that stuff. And you're like, okay, so now you understand the FANG stocks and the digital transformation and the major tech trends. So what is Bitcoin? It's the digital transformation of capital. It's the most secure network. It's open. You may join it. So it's like a cryptography, secure, unhackable network. That's a whole different thing, but it's also a monetary network. So the question is, you can live and operate in the euro, EU. You can live in North America and use the dollar or the Canadian. Like you can use whatever local currency of the country you're in, but you can also opt into the Bitcoin network, which is global, permissionless, and open and compatible with your local currency. Again, it's like Forex. So what's the value of Bitcoin in dollar? I'm like, well, today it's worth 83 or 100. Okay. But what's your time horizon? It's like, well, in the next 5 years, I have a point of view that Bitcoin is demonetizing gold. So the digital transformation of capital as a capital allocator. If you look at the 2024, the most successful ETF launch of BlackRock with the Bitcoin ETF. And then it wasn't just BlackRock, it was Fidelity and ARK and like 6 to 10 others, right? So if you look at the charts, which again, I've got access to really cool charts, it just blew the gold ETF out of the water. And the gold ETF launched in like 2004. So like 21 years ago. So so basically people that are buying ETFs, they're like, I want access to gold, but indirectly through ETFs are probably rotating out to Bitcoin. Bitcoin had the best launch of ETFs just in terms of all ETFs, right? And we have a whole year of data and it's only going to continue that trend. And so my point is it's 2025, it's March 2025. Between now and 2030, and that's like the time frame that I'd like to have, is
Sure.
I think, and what I'm hearing and what I'm gathering is that Bitcoin is demonetizing gold. Bitcoin has a market cap of 2 trillion. I hear that any asset class that's achieved a market cap of 2 trillion never disappears. So it's like the state, so it's already hit 2 trillion.
The Lindy effect is too strong.
Yeah. And now you have like capital allocators and flows and macro scales globally saying, okay, rotate out of gold. Maybe that my house isn't a store of value, or I don't need a second home. Where I live is a utility, but that second or third home, maybe you're seeing a trend of people that run Airbnbs, maybe realize that's not such a great business model. So what's a better, capital allocation for a store of value, less risks, Bitcoin. And so the point is, when the Bitcoin network hits parity with the gold network, it's basically 20 trillion. And today we're at 2 trillion. So there's a 10x, and that's not the end of the story. So again, it's all just having perspective where it's like catch up to where we are today and then make a 5-year plan, 2025, 2026, 2030. And then what would you do as a business owner, capital allocator, if you had a point of view that Bitcoin was going to 10x? Like think about that. It can't be promised, but look at the trends and say, if I had some extra capital to store and save in, and I wanted to protect my purchasing power, what is the best savings vehicle? You can conflate it with an investment, maybe, but we have to be careful there. But nonetheless, and then we get to the year 2030 and Bitcoin is now the largest asset class. It's overtaken gold. By the way, Bitcoin already overtook silver last year. So I've already watched the last 6 months overtake silver. There's a website that shows the market cap of the big companies in the world, the Amazons, the Meta and, Microsoft and so forth, but then also has like the assets of gold, silver, et cetera. So Bitcoin has already overtaken silver. And then you got a number of these like tech companies, and then comes gold. And so I would say, that the trend is clear. And even when we hit parity with a $20 trillion market cap, I think it was Michael Saylor a few days ago was saying that that's not the end of the story. And we zoom out to 10 or 20 years, and then that ties into the national debt conversation and strategic Bitcoin reserve. But it's Bitcoin will be a $200 trillion market cap asset class. So that is the digital transformation of capital, which is the biggest story, more so than the digital transformation of records and CDs into an iPod. So it's like, we've seen the digital transformation from Blockbuster, Netflix, Kodak to digital. So like, we've all watched that in our lifetime, the last 20 years. Okay. The biggest digital transformation story is Bitcoin, and it's collecting the excess store value from gold, from real estate. Now people that are talking about the bond market, not my area of expertise, but super interesting. So yeah, so I would just say that like the conversation has to be tailored to the business, to the individual, to the industry, to the maturity. But how can you even have a strategy or a plan if you don't even have a clear snapshot of where we are in time? And so I think what attracted me as Sovreign and why I joined and why I changed my career is to say the most interesting conversation I can have when I get up in the morning is taking my point of view, everything I've learned about Bitcoin and helping people, but also being like, okay, like how can you make an informed decision if you're still fighting the idea of Bitcoin? Like if you're still rejecting it. So as long as we meet with people that have an open mind and are interested, what is the opportunity cost of not understanding Bitcoin and denying it in 2025 with all the misinformation and so forth? Like I get it. A few years ago, it was confusing. 5-10 years ago, it was, you just professionally, you weren't,
Wild West.
you weren't allowed to talk about it. You stay away from it, career risk, super sketch, all that good stuff. But like one by one, I've watched like just tick, tick, tick. Like it's just, that's no longer the case. And so if you are in tune with reality in the world we are truly in right now, in 2025, going forward, it is the light switch. It's different. Now it's a career risk to not understand it, to have no plan. And really you're going to walk around being like, you don't understand what money and value and a network, like the most dominant network and how this can impact your business. So it's the most interesting conversation. It's the most interesting story. And I feel like using like business as a vehicle for good, it's like if we can help the right people, we can save businesses and jobs and so forth. And this is good for the economy in so many ways, with direct and indirect consequences. So yeah, so it's just, opening that up. So the last thing I'll say is, it was just, the last thing I'll say about this was thinking about what is the opportunity cost of not understanding it. And like, that's the value of the conversation that we want to have is where are you? Like, what is your financial literacy? Be honest. It's a private consultation. Like we're not arguing with, this is the joke is that we're not going to argue with you and debate you on the internet. I'm not going to, embarrass you or call you out. Like I actually don't want to do that. That's a huge waste of everyone's time. But it's, what if you could save face, save time and be like, hey, we'll catch you up to speed. Like this Bitcoin thing. Yeah. You ignored it. You rejected it. You don't understand it. That's okay. That's again, the opportunity here is that 98% of the planet doesn't get it, but it's real. It's valuable. It's happening. So, and it's open. So like hop on board and you can do a bunch of free stuff, but we can point you in the right direction. But the real value prop is like collapsing a journey, a learning journey from 5 years. Oh, and good luck. You might never make it across the finish line. You might fall into a trap who, will help you to the mountaintop as your guide and help you in your maturity. And will also be aware of your industry and your needs and where you are on that mountain. Like that's like, I think that's the value of this service and this type of organization. And again, the ecosystem is so interesting. There's so many cool startups and brilliant people, and they're doing so many things. And it's like, okay, well, we can point you in the right direction or bring you into partners, but who is that blue that is your partner along the journey? And again, that's the value of a professional services consultancy of trusted advisors made up of Bitcoiners first and foremost. And so that's Daniel, when I found Sovreign and what you've created here, I was like, yep, I just kicked the door open and said, okay, I'm a part of the team now.
So, man, that really fired me up, that whole tangent there. That was absolutely brilliant. That is exactly what drew me to start Sovreign. That Bitcoin and having this conversation is the most interesting conversation. And I found myself often in my job in my other business, which was really previously my dream job, doing marketing and websites and stuff. But I found myself feeling just how utterly, and this is no offense to people in any other professions, but just how inconsequential it was compared to what was really happening. Because if somebody was listening to this conversation and what you just shared there, and they had no idea about this digital transformation, that should absolutely blow their mind. And they should go, wow, there is something happening right now of immense proportions, a once in a species event, some people would say, and I'm not even aware that it's taking place. That should be the only logical response to this. And digital transformation capital, I do want to pull a little bit on that because I think people have a hard time really understanding what it means. If I understand correctly from how you're describing it, it is the digital transformation of information was going from the analog to the digital. So instead of an analog CD, it's now digital music, or an analog map, it's a digital map. The 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 reason why that was so valuable is because digital things are usually, if not always, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 times stronger, faster, more valuable than their outdated counterparts. And so, and you'll have to correct me if I say this wrong, the digital transformation of capital is taking the old, outdated, analog, physical versions of stores of value and capital and transforming it into a new, refined, perfected, in quotes, digital form of capital.
Yeah.
And just to, yeah, like the real estate, it's an old, it's a building. Wouldn't that value the you have the utility value of a building, which is certainly valuable, but the monetary premium that you placed above it, would that not be better served in a perfect digitally scarce thing with no tenants, no maintenance, no upkeep, no hurricane warnings? And that same thing goes for bonds, pieces of paper, debt, and all of these, or gold, which is just a rock.
Yeah.
Please, if you could just elaborate a little bit on that, I think it's so important.
Yeah. I think you touched it. Yeah. And I can mix metaphors too, because it's, how do you explain this? It's so,
Sure.
yeah. If your family is storing their value in a building, right? And that
Mhm.
building is worth X amount of dollars, the building has risks, right? So there's decay,
Yes.
there's hurricanes, there's political stuff. So Michael Saylor does a brilliant presentation on this. It's all the risks. And so it's like, okay, so physical things have risk, and real estate's a really, it could burn down, but then the next metaphor about the digital transformation of capital is Bitcoin digital gold? Sort of, but
Mm,
not really. But it's a good mental, like it's a good piece to think about. It's not inclusive, but okay. But what about a gold bar as a store of value? For sure. But the digital transformation of that is that I can email you value now. So basically,
mm,
so is Bitcoin like the information age? So instead of texting you or emailing you, for cheaply and instantaneously, now I can transfer to you 1 million Satoshis or $1 million
yes.
through Bitcoin. So basically, it's that missing layer on the internet was the value protocol and the open standard of that. So again, if you're into this stuff, it's like TCP and HTTP, and there's like all these protocols. BTC
Mhm.
is the missing protocol of transfer of value. So,
Exact. Well
and
said.
it's the strongest, most powerful, secure blockchain. So again, and all the copies of Bitcoin, the 10, 20, 50,000 copies have all failed, and their blockchains aren't secure, and the network value is nothing compared to this, the dominant. So Bitcoin is already won. So that is the digital transformation. There is no counterfeits. There's no copies. And that's the other piece is you can't counterfeit Bitcoin. Like with,
Mhm.
with digital things that are not scarce, like music, you can copy a song, movies, you can copy a movie, emails, images. So there's copies and counterfeits, and there's no cost to that, right? But
Yes.
with Bitcoin, it's a digital bare asset. So if I send you a Bitcoin, I used to have it, now you have it. And if you have the keys to spend it, then you own it. And from an information standpoint, you don't even need hardware for that. It's knowing is owning. So with a gold bar, if I have a gold bar, it's a bare asset. It's mine. If I hand it to you, it's yours, right? So whoever has the gold bar. So the digital transformation of a bare asset that also can't be counterfeited, right? That gold bar might not be pure gold, but a Bitcoin, you run your own node, you can verify and you won't accept it, and the blocks will confirm it in the blockchain from the end of time. So there's that. And then again, I think Michael Saylor does the best job of explaining, like digital transformation of real estate and how if it's entropy, like if you just don't want the decay of value. So do you want your store of value to last 100 years or 1,000 years, intergenerational, or build a company that's going to be an empire forever? Well, and then I think he uses the phrase cyber Manhattan, which is the best metaphor is, the analogy of like buying real estate in the past and seeing the economy of real estate and the value created of the network of Manhattan, the physical island, and to say, okay, you have 21 million blocks in cyber Manhattan. And by the way, you don't have to buy a whole building. You can stack a SAT. You don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. Just you can show up and plug in to any unit amount that you work. So this changes everything. And so once you understand all that, like once you're open to it and once you get a little skin in the game or get started, get off of zero, then you can form an opinion, then you can build a strategy. And I think this is the age of opportunity, is that it's like, we're just looking for people that are open to it. And there's so many benefits, and it's, choose your own adventure. There's so many things you can do with it, but it's an open platform. And then there is success already. I mean, formerly MicroStrategy, now Strategy. I mean, that's a very misunderstood or very niche company, but the people that did the work to understand Bitcoin, then understand what the brilliance of that is. And what Michael Saylor and Strategy have done have outperformed the Mag 7. And the Mag 7 these 7 companies are holding up the whole S&P 500. So you have the best of the best of the best, and it's misunderstood because there's people in maybe TradFi, whatever, that haven't done the work to understand Bitcoin first.
Yeah.
So if you understand Bitcoin, then you understand the brilliance of what Saylor has done at Strategy. You could say,
absolutely.
Now maybe you're a publicly traded company, and maybe you want to emulate that. And there's some mining companies like Mara and so forth that have, and I've seen some stuff on some of the partners talking about, was it like GameStop or, Zoom and so forth. But even if you're not a publicly traded company, in fact, it's a lot easier if you don't have to commit some board of directors and shareholders. So if you're a privately held, it's called SME, mid-size private company, it's actually a lot easier to incorporate a Bitcoin strategy to find the value in the use case.
Yes.
And if it's owner operated small business, I'm the owner, I'm the founder, I'm an entrepreneur, like that. I mean, that's like the quickest path to impact of helping people, I think. Whereas of course the publicly traded have red tape, and as they should. But there is a open playbook, again, open network. Michael Saylor has on his website the most transparent financials. And
yes, very good point.
So it's open. In fact, and again, I was at the conference with a Pomp in New York a few weeks ago, and you had the Meta Planet. So the Japanese publicly traded company, most successful publicly traded company in Japan since adopting the Strategy Bitcoin playbook. And there's a lot of reasons why, but it's brilliant, it's interesting, and it saved his company. He survived real estate, pandemic, and had to do something. And so again, it's just like, it's a hard conversation of, hey, you're on the wrong trajectory, or something happened, a true black swan, you didn't see it coming. What do we do now? And if you have open eyes and you're open mind, you say, well, what's different today than 20 years ago? Bitcoin is 16 years old, right? Michael Saylor came to the table in 2020 had a melting ice cube, had to do something. And he's been nothing but successful and survived a bear market. You talked about FTX,
Yes.
the mainstream financial, Wall Street Journal and so forth. There were, just kind of trying to dunk on people at their lowest, but he persevered, It's like, I watched that with El Salvador, with MicroStrategy, the first country, the first company to adopt Bitcoin standard. They had to survive the bear market. And once they did, the day they're vindicated, and in the next 5-10 years, it's only going to get better for them. So now they're openly sharing the playbook. So the question is,
You just have to look. I mean, this is one of the things that gave me the most peace of mind is I don't even have to sit here making up stories and saying, oh, if you put Bitcoin on your balance sheet, it's going to be so good. Just trust me. Just look at the results and the track record of the companies that do. Every company that we know of that's put Bitcoin on their balance sheet are just doing so well that it's kind of breaking the models, and it's having to redefine a lot of different things and new kind of investment metrics like Bitcoin yield, Bitcoin per share. This is changing the entire landscape, and I think to put a bow on the whole digital capital thing, I think it's very important for people to understand that yes, adopting Bitcoin is a choice. You were very courteous in the way you said, well, it's here, it's happening. We're here for those that want to come join us. But understand this, if Bitcoin is demonetizing other assets, that means the assets that you own are going to bleed value into Bitcoin. So it's not just that you're going to miss out on Bitcoin, it's that whatever assets that you already hold on your balance sheet or personally, they are going to have their value extracted into the superior network. I think very few people actually appreciate that fact. It's not just Bitcoin going up, it's everything going down in Bitcoin terms. Of course, there's going to be new value and new capital generated in society, but the hundreds and hundreds of trillions of dollars that are stored in token real estate, land banking, bonds, uh, art, and collectibles. Once people get wise to the fact that there's Bitcoin around, they're going to sell that stuff and they're going to buy into that network. So there's nowhere to hide. That's how I would. So I think last question here is so Bitcoin on the balance sheet, is that just for the big, you did already touch on this, but is that only for big corporations that can do financial engineering and stuff? But what does it do for just your mom and pop shop down the street? What does it do for a pizzeria or a dry cleaner or an accountant firm or just and your average company? Why should they even care? They don't have a huge balance sheet. They're very P&L focused. They're just going along.
yeah.
What do they get from Bitcoin?
Yeah, I would just say, you start with the store value and the unit of account. So whatever you're not using as operating, just to begin, the first use case is to save in Bitcoin. And again, I can't promise future results, but I can just point to trends to say, okay, if Bitcoin demonetizes gold over the next so many years, that's a 10x of market cap, right? From 2 to 20 trillion. But if you look at the last 5 or 10 years, again, look at US dollar over Bitcoin and look at the trend. So I think it goes back to a conversation about what is value, what is money, what are your options for story value. So sitting in cash is probably not the best idea. You need to have a little runway, but if it doesn't need to stay in cash, should it be in Bitcoin? And remember, Bitcoin is 24/7 global. So if you have to convert it, you can always do that. That's unique as well. So I would say that. And then based on the industry, there are use cases. So things that I find interesting about Bitcoin are new use cases and value props, such as you can accept Bitcoin for payment. So you can actually do invoices, and we have partner companies and make it user friendly. So once you start thinking about Bitcoin as your unit of account, you're like, okay, I'm saving some extra capital into Bitcoin. Okay. But now, hey, I'm going to invoice you. Also I have an international team, and I'm going to pay contractors and partners in Bitcoin, right? So it's global.
Yep.
Um, then what about paying your employees in Bitcoin, right? And
Mhm.
educating them. And so one of the things that I'm keeping open to is like, is there a way to do like corporate training where it's like, I don't know, like even like helping the HR department say, hey, employees, you are our best asset. We love you. That's why we work with you. This is a small company of 500, 500 people, but like without you, we'd be nothing. So we want to pay you in Bitcoin. Like, maybe like we want to give you the optionality where instead of just giving you the paycheck and you go convert to Bitcoin, like, would you like to do that as like an HR function? So like integrate into the
Yeah.
company's HR. What about there's the whole 401k thing where like Fidelity and others, like there's ways to, there's direct Bitcoin, but now there's the ETFs, there's MSTR, there's options, and you can plug that in and talk to a financial professional, of course, but you could plug that into your 401k now, and like that can be done Bitcoin
Interesting.
or Bitcoin wrappers or the Bitcoin mining
Yeah.
stocks. Like there's exposures, direct or indirect, strategy, MSTR being one of them. Um, but then it goes into like, what about marketing with Bitcoin? So what if you say,
Mm.
I accept Bitcoin for payment? Well, that's cool. If I knew that, I would maybe go to a coffee shop that accepts Bitcoin, and that's the whole thing about
Yep.
like, should you pay for coffee? It's like, yeah, maybe, but like, maybe that is a novel use case of like paying an invoice with Bitcoin, and maybe that attracts you to go there, right? So going to the Pub Key Tavern in New York City over some other dive bar, right? So it's like,
Yeah, I mean, the second that you accept Bitcoin, you certainly the general public, most people aren't transacting in Bitcoin. But if you care about getting more customers and free advertisement, there's a whole community of people, especially in the US, that will literally go out of their way just to use you and promote you and make posts about you online. It's free marketing and free
it's
sales.
so it is a marketing, yeah. So it can be a marketing channel, and also it can be a signifier of values and
Yes.
high quality goods and services. There's a burger shack that's on the internet. I think it's in Indianapolis, and they're talking about like beef tallow fries,
Yeah,
and,
I
and
saw that.
now they're getting to like libertarian philosophy,
Sure.
and so all of a sudden you're like, okay, so here is a subculture, but they're on the right track, hard money, like quality food, and so basically if I'm going to part with my Bitcoin, spend, like, would you buy coffee with a bar of gold, even if you could chip off the gold? Like, probably not. But with Bitcoin, you can spend and replace. I could buy a
Yes.
cup of coffee. I could use the Lightning Network. I could use a little bit. And then it's like, if I still wanted to have Bitcoin as my store of value, I could then go get $5 of Bitcoin later the same day. And so you could spend the Bitcoin and get into this, but what you're doing is you're rewarding high quality goods and services. And if you run a business, whatever industry you're in, if you're going to attract Bitcoiners, you're attracting people with core values of integrity and the truth and, like high quality, like again, it's a better store of value. So you're already upgrading the currency. So I think there's even like a psychology and a marketing framework about promoting that you accept and are open for
Yes.
business with Bitcoin. Then if you're on the Bitcoin standard from a store of value, that's amazing. And then if you want to reward your employees by paying them, incentivizing them, protecting their, giving them the optionality to make their own choices, but their 401ks, et cetera. It's forward thinking, and it's not just young people. It's not, oh, do you want to attract young people? It's like, no, do you want to retain people that are paying attention and value the
Mm.
future? And like, if you help me protect my savings, that, my work, like if stored in Bitcoin. So if
Yeah.
your employer helps you with that and is aware of that and gives you the option and they can maybe even train you, I think that's pretty cool too. So, we're looking at this from like a top down of talk to the owners of the business, the operators of the business, the people that run the
Sure.
teams. But I'm even
Yeah.
thinking, yeah, what about the HR departments too, and so forth, the benefits. And then maybe it's the marketing, the sales marketing teams, is how do they integrate use cases and, and then promote it. So it's like, it's not just I accept Bitcoin for
Very
payment,
interesting.
but I'm going to tie that into a marketing campaign, which will then attract more customers. Like, so but you have to do it right because again, Bitcoiners can hear and know the difference between people that have done the work and people that use the wrong language. So again,
Absolutely.
you start using crypto, blockchain, you also accept meme coins. Like this will derail the whole thing. So it's,
You
there's
got to do it right. You
right.
gotta do it.
So
Man, this what you're talking about there, it sounds like what we internally at Sovreign call the Bitcoin business standard.
mm,
It's kind of framework we're developing. We haven't really released it to the public yet, but this holistic way of looking at Bitcoin in a business, because and I look at it as there's layers to it, there's levels to it. Buying some Bitcoin, that's just getting your feet wet. That's the table stakes. You're getting your foot in the door. But then going to an operational level and using it for payments and to workforce solutions, helping your employees, because I think people are going to start demanding this. As more and more people understand this, they're going to demand benefits in Bitcoin, whether that's paying to their 401k or bonuses in Bitcoin or Bitcoin stock options. And at the final level, you completely change the entire way you think about business using the lens of Bitcoin with it as a unit of account and financing capex with Bitcoin instead of taking out debt for acquiring some new piece of machinery. What if you put aside Bitcoin now, and then in 3, 4, 5 years, that could afford to pay for whatever expansion you were doing? Well, by the same lens, if I think that Bitcoin has on the low end a 30% CAGR and maybe a 60% CAGR, that means I can get, let's just say 30% risk free. Well, where does that put our new product line and our new expansion and our new subsidiary and our new acquisition and all of these things? If I if that's only going to generate a 15 or 20% return and there's all this risk and all this capital locked up in it, why would I not just buy the Bitcoin? That's the final level where you completely
yeah.
start thinking differently because you now have this tool, Bitcoin, that didn't exist before, and it completely changes everything. Do you have any final remarks to that? I see we've crossed the 1 hour mark. We're nearing the end of the show here.
No, this has been a great conversation. We could go down so many tangents. I mean, you mentioned earlier the new KPIs, key performance indicators with what strategy Michael Saylor has developed, right? And maybe that's for public company. You just mentioned the hurdle rate. So CAGR, ARR, basically, hey, if the opportunity cost, if I have extra capital, if I put it in Bitcoin, historically, or what the trend looks like it's going to do, it's going to compound return annual growth rate of 30% a year, 60% a year. And so, I listened to Jack Mahler's with Anthony Pompilano at that conference in New York a few weeks ago. And Jack Mahler's very funny. He said, someone comes into my office and says, hey, I got a new business idea. And it's like, cool. Will it generate 61%?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, get out of my office. He was more colorful and funny about it. And it was a great fireside chat. But so the point right there is, if you understand this and you're using this and it's the mental model, the opportunity cost of not understanding this, the coaching, help you save face, catch you up, be there for you, have like a legal retainer, but a Bitcoin retainer. So by the way, I always think it's like, here I am joining Sovreign, bringing my differentiated point of view, my own experience, my own journey, but I'm really careful not to call myself an expert, even though I absolutely am compared to the average person on the street that has done no work. It's like, yes, I am an expert, but I'm humble enough to know this is such a cross-functional, broad thing. So the value of the team is there are individuals with different subject matter expertise areas. And as a collective, we can come in and do a project or help a customer on their journey. And so it's a deep bench of talent, but you have the right people to listen for it. But yeah, so once you understand all that, you're like, okay, So the hurdle rate is 30 or 60%. So if you're going to save in cash, which is being debased, or if you think diversifying, like, why would you not park your extra capital? And then can you think of a business line or like some project that's going to return more than that? So all of a sudden it's like digitally transforming capital that's being misallocated into Bitcoin is the smartest thing you can do for your business.
And the most risk averse strategy, I would say, once you truly understand it. Um,
Yeah.
I think, to end it on this, I think it's been a theme in this
Yes.
talk. There's a revolution going on. There's something that's completely changing the face of investing in business. And the old strategies of, what do we do with excess capital? Do we do mergers and acquisitions? Do we do stock buybacks? Do we just buy the 10-year? Now all of that has to be contrasted with buying Bitcoin. And you can either let this happen and come join in later as a laggard, or you can be a first mover and an innovator and pounce on this and take advantage and ride that wave instead of just sitting by the sidelines and watching it all happen. I guess let's end it on that. This was
Yeah.
really interesting conversation, Jeff. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Why don't we say this? Where can people find you right now? Is there somewhere you would like people to follow you if they wanted to learn more about you?
Yeah. Come to our website, come to sovreign.io, which is spelled SOVREIGN.io. And so it's basically a branded play on the word sovereign. And yeah, if you come to the About Us page, you have our mission, you have the core team. I'm on there. You have my email and my LinkedIn and my X. But the other thing is we also have a contact us form, and we have a newsletter, an ebook you can download. So I would just say, come to our website, sign up for the newsletter, download the ebook, be our team, and then literally email me or somebody, but book a free consultation. It starts with a conversation. We want to get to know you. We've got the whole team. I would love to be your first point of contact. And again, we all work together, so we can pass you out
Absolutely.
based on your
Reach out,
schedule.
Jeff. And
Yeah.
this is another thing. Since we're in this completely new industry and people don't know what we're doing and why they need Bitcoin, we offer free strategy sessions. So if you're like, well, it sounds interesting, but I don't know why I should care, just talk to us. Hit up Jeff, hit up me, whoever you want, and we'll help you understand how Bitcoin fits into your business.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Daniel. And yeah, these are great conversations. I feel like we can help people the most with these, and it's all a journey. So again, we can
Amazing.
meet you where you are, and we'll take it from there.
Well, I enjoyed this, and my
Yeah.
benchmark for this, I think I'll say, is if I had never encountered Bitcoin or I was a beginner and I listened to this, I would be very inspired. I would take a lot away from what you've said because I think you really wove a very interesting story there. So that's going to be my benchmark. I really enjoyed this. Have a wonderful rest of your day, Jeff, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks so much. Have a good day.